Hey friends, I hope you are having the best day. I'm Jen Gray, and this is Be Genuine Podcast. Every week we are diving deep into life, personal growth, and why your authenticity is your superpower. I am so excited for today's episode. Let's jump in. Hey friend, we are for real going to jump right in. I am excited about this episode, and I say that cautiously because it's heavy. It's a heavy topic, and if you have been affected by unforgiveness, or if you've been affected by judgment or betrayal or anything, I believe this episode could be a major source of encouragement for you, and maybe even tools that you can use to help build bridges in your own relationships. But I think a word that doesn't often go along with the idea of forgiveness, and that's empathy. I think when we think forgiveness, a lot of times we may think justice, right? We think someone has done me wrong, therefore I will react as A, B, or C in response to how they've treated me. And this conversation today is going to be a little bit different. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because I lived in a season where I was so hurt and felt like such a victim that I lived in a state with a huge weight on my shoulders. And I had bitterness and hurt and anger towards probably 80% of the people in my life. And I am telling you, after living in that way, now on the other side of a year and a half of experiencing like genuine release of forgiveness and freedom in my own life, that's why there's so much weight as I speak about this today, because I know if you genuinely take this to heart and if you let the guard down a little bit and understand that this conversation isn't attacking you and saying you just need to forgive and it's your fault. And I don't know what you've experienced or what you've been through, but I do know that there is a path to build a relationship with the person that you're hurt by or that you've hurt, if you're willing to look at it through a different lens. And the lens that we're choosing today to look at it through is that of empathy. So rewind back, 2018, 2019, y'all, I didn't have an enemy in my life. Like, I liked everybody. Everybody liked me, or at least, on the outside appearance. And then life took a huge turn to the left. I went through a divorce, and with the church that I was involved with, that caused a lot of upheaval, right? And so hurt people hurt people. I was hurt. I hurt people and all of that. And so fast forward to 2023, I hit rock bottom. And if you're new to this podcast, I'd urge you just to go back and listen to some previous parts of my story, but not to go into too many details, but just to say, I ended back up in my hometown and genuinely was like a fish out of water because I had burned almost every bridge possible in the city. In my own hurt, I had cut off relationship after relationship after relationship. And let me just let you know, going from someone who never, ever, ever disliked anybody or cut off any bridges to someone who had cut off so many relationships, I had done so out of protection. I had done so out of really a very unhealthy view of boundaries. And I thought that the only way to protect my and guard my own heart was to put up brick walls with people. And later I've learned it's not brick walls that we need. It's bridges that build relationships in the way that honors who we are, right? So boundaries are still a thing, and guardrails on these bridges that we're building with people are super, super, super important because we are not doormats. But also, if you want to build a bridge to a relationship, it's possible. But I do not believe it's possible without empathy. And here's kind of the difference between empathy and sympathy. If you've heard both of those words, like sympathy is just feeling sorry for someone, right? So it's very easy to feel sorry for yourself and maybe feel sorry for somebody else, but that doesn't take into the depth of what empathy looks like. And empathy means literally walking in someone else's shoes. And I think it's super important for us to understand how big it is to actually try to, as much as possible, step into someone else's shoes and possibly see life through their lens. Thinking through, what religious background they have, or what experiences they've had, or what their family life is like, or what parts of their world they're bringing to the table, so that you can start to see why they react and respond in the ways that they do. So for me, I love this. I love this quote. It says, "Empathy allows us to see past someone's actions and connect with their humanity." Now, when I went through a divorce, working at a Southern Baptist church, and understandably so, there were people that weren't happy, right? There were things in place to where I could no longer have the position at that church that I had, because there's certain standards in place. Fast forwarding myself 5 years removed from the situation, I can get that. In the moment, though, I just felt hurt and kicked and pushed down and pushed out and all of the things. And as I stepped out of the situation, I can say, you know what? I get it. Does that mean I agree or do I condone? No. But do I understand? Yes. And so I want you to also know that whatever you've gone through, and having empathy on the other side, does not mean condoning the way you were treated or talked to or what happened. That's not what you have to do. You do not have to condone actions in order to build bridges of forgiveness. And so for me, I had to sit by myself, and I had to come to a place where I could understand, based on where this leadership was coming from, why they made the decisions that they did. Right? Did it still hurt? Yes. Did it still sting? Absolutely. But what I learned is, if I just stay in my pain and my hurt, then there is no possible way for a bridge for forgiveness. And I also want you to understand, this did not come with any other conversation with anybody else but my own internal conversation. You may not get the gift of forgiveness by ever having someone come to you and ask for forgiveness. But I'm here to tell you that forgiveness is still possible even without an apology, because it is absolutely an internal deal that you've got to deal with. And here's what I want you to think about, like right now. If you have someone in your life and you're like, Jen, you lost me at forgiveness, you lost me at pain, you lost me at betrayal. I don't care what you say. I'm glad. Good for you, Jen. I'm glad that worked for you. But you don't understand my situation. I get it. 100%. I don't. I haven't heard your story yet. But maybe you felt like me, and every day you woke up feeling like you had this weight on you, and it was taking away the quality of your life day in and day out, because you were literally carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, because every day you were reminded of the pain and the hurt of this relationship or relationships. And as much as you tried to push it to the side and push it to the back burner, you just felt the weight all the time. And if you've heard part of my story, where in 2023, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't even know the two eyes looking back at me, that was part of it. I'm looking at myself and I'm like, Jen, what? Like, there's so much weight of forgiveness. And here's the thing, ask yourself this question. If you or that person were to pass away tomorrow, would you be okay without any restoration in your relationship? If you received a life-threatening diagnosis tomorrow, would anything in your relationship change? And if the answer is yes, then let's not wait for the life-threatening diagnosis. Let's not wait for someone to pass away and you cannot possibly build a bridge. Then you live with a life of regret. And I literally got on my knees and thanked God that I didn't have to experience that type of regret, because I didn't have the diagnosis, and everyone I needed to mend relationships with was thankfully still alive. And that may sound really morbid, but that's where I was at, because I was so scared to receive a call that someone that I hadn't spoken to in years had passed away. But where do we start? I think first it starts with recognizing the fact that you're living with this like weight in your gut. That you're like, you know what? Yeah, Jen, I relate with that. I resonate with that like feeling every day that I wake up. And I can't even think about this person because it brings so much pain. That's what I'm talking about. And I want you just to consider maybe like one step towards forgiveness, one step towards understanding. And we're going to talk a little bit about like some tools that you can use in building those bridges and what that kind of looks like and things that worked for me, that helped me. And I will say every relationship was different because if you're like me, it was a two-way street. Try forgiving someone who also needs to forgive you. You don't get to choose whether someone else forgives you, but what you can control is everything on your side of the bridge. And that's all we're going to talk about today. Don't even think about what you can't control. There's no reason to even go there. But what can you control on your side? First, we've got to understand that the releasing of the resentment, right? The releasing of this weight does not mean condoning actions. But what it does mean is stepping into someone else's life. We're not letting someone off the hook. That's another thing. When people talk about forgiveness, I'm like, you don't even get it. You don't even understand. Like, do you know what they did? It's not letting someone off the hook. But I want to tell you another story. So my dad was an alcoholic, and he wasn't always an alcoholic. He became an alcoholic when he lost a really, really big job. We actually had relocated as a family from Atlanta up to Chattanooga for a year and a half, and everything crumbled. We literally had to move back in with his mom. And as a kid, I mean, I was really protected from the pain of it all. I'm just like, oh, perfect. Let's go move in with Mama Mary, right? Like, let's go do this. I didn't know the panic of it. But as an adult, I can understand how humiliating it must have felt as my dad to feel like he failed us. And thing after thing after thing happened. And my dad had a crazy childhood. He was raised by a single mom. He was the oldest of three kids. He held a lot of that weight. And in his pain, he caused a lot of pain. And there's no reason in sharing the mess of his story. It's his story. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2022. And he doesn't get to share his side of the story anymore. And what I'm so thankful for is that there was redemption in mine and my dad's story, because for so many decades of my life, my dad brought a lot of pain. Alcoholism and anger combined can bring a lot of abuse and pain and really, really, really hard things. And that's what my dad was for me. He wasn't someone I could go to about anything, because it was going to be a lecture, or it was going to be an argument, or it was going to escalate to something even worse than that. So a huge portion of my life, I don't have great memories of my dad. But my younger years, and thankfully in my later years, I did. And it's interesting what pain will do to you. And so after my divorce, my dad, of all people, was someone that actually became one of my greatest friends through it all. And he still had all of his craziness, because alcohol did affect him in so many ways, and his brain it wasn't what he used to be. Literally, he became homeless for the last 10 years of his life, when he had before owned his own business and built it to the top. But I had conversations with my dad where I just asked questions. And I think some of it was because the people that had hurt my dad had now also hurt me. And it's interesting how that can shift your perspective. When you feel like you're on top of the world and you maybe live on a pedestal and you're looking down on everybody else in your life, it's really, 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 really easy to put somebody else down and to put yourself up. But when you've been kicked off of that pedestal and you are lying in the dirt with the rest of everybody else, it shifts your perspective. And I don't wish the hard times that I went through on anybody, but I'm telling you, for that very life lesson, I am so thankful that I got knocked to my face off of the pedestal and started asking questions and seeking to understand people that I had judged before. And if there's one thing I learned in the lowest of lows, is you guys, we have got to judge way less and love a whole lot more. And everybody's got a story. And how many times did I know that and believe that, but I never gave people the time? So I gave my dad time to share his story, and he did. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what childhood was actually like. I learned a lot about just hard things that he dealt with. And it was actually like he didn't have any outlet to share his pain. And he definitely didn't have the tools to be able to look vulnerable to anybody, because he's from the generation where men don't cry and everybody's strong. right? So if you build up these brick walls between you and other people and you feel alone and you feel like nobody gets you and you feel like you don't know what to do and where to turn to, that could cause somebody to go crazy, which gave me some understanding of why he actually legitimately went crazy. And so, as I'm seeking to understand my dad and understanding why he acted like that, and how maybe if I just listened sooner, my dad actually could have had an outlet when he was ready to express those things. And so, there are so many conversations that I had with him that I'm so thankful that I actually had the humility in my own life to have with him. And I never, ever, ever would have had it had I not been on knocked on the ground. But I didn't let my dad off the hook for all of that pain. And that pain was still real. But what I did was release my dad from the bondage that I had put him in as the victim of what my childhood did. And instead, I started to shift it. Because, y'all, I do believe when it says life happens for you, not to you. When Tony Robbins made that statement, I was like a light bulb. I'm so thankful that the empathy that I can now have because I've had an alcoholic dad. I'm thankful for the way that I see people and I see people and their pain because I've experienced an alcoholic dad. I'm thankful that I've learned to take care of people because I had an alcoholic dad. And it took me going to rock bottom to then actually appreciate the pain in my life and understand the only way our resiliency has grown is because of the hard times we've endured. So we can look at those through the lens of the lessons that we've learned instead of feeling like it's something that is an attack on us. So I don't condone my dad for the way he treated me, the way he treated my mom, for the way he treated my sisters, for the way he acted to other family members. I don't condone that. But what it taught me is that they're now knowing the pain he was going through behind the scenes during those times, watching other people's actions, I know that there's another story. That they may be acting out against you, but it's not about you. It wasn't about me that my dad was lashing out. It wasn't about me. It was about his own pain. Have you ever considered the fact that you are the brunt of someone else's pain because they're actually experiencing something really, really deep and they have no idea the tools or the words to get it out there? The emotional intelligence isn't there for them to know how on earth to heal or to even comprehend what's going on in their own world. So, the one step towards freeing ourselves from negative emotions around that is to actually go back to what I've said probably 4 times now. We've got to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Here's what I want to land on this. 3 ways you're going to cultivate empathy towards forgiveness. I want you to think about relationships right now, and maybe you can just think about one relationship. One relationship right now that's like really, really strained, like really strained. And it feels like it would be a miracle for there to build a bridge. And I will tell you that I had 2 of those relationships a little over a year ago. And I had hurt these 2 people very deeply, and they had hurt me very deeply. And I wasn't even sure if there was a path because I was holding on to a couple of different scenarios and saying, there's no way I can get past this. There's no way I can get past this. And you know how I got past that? Because I started imagining, is there another way I could be interpreting this story differently? Is there another lens that I can see this? And what I actually started to do was to start to go back through and say, is there a way that I could shift the meaning? Is there a way that I can assume positive intent? Well, that's heavy. Because you go back to a situation and you're like, there is no way, if they love me, there's no way on earth that they could have done that to me. Or is there? Is there any way that they actually could have been trying to do good in their own mind, and even though that good in their own mind brought you pain? At first, I'm like, heck no, there's no way. There's absolutely no way on earth there's any other explanation for what happened. Until I got to a point, y'all, and I just wanted peace. And I'm like, how on earth can I build a bridge without just shoving it and forgetting about it? Because in my life, that's the only way I understood how to deal with conflict. shove it, forget about it, throw it under a rug, and go on. You know what that does? Creates volcanoes. You keep shoving stuff under a rug, that rug is going to freaking explode one day. And I've had so many explosions in my life, and I'm like, listen, there's got to be a better way. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to assume positive intent. Is there any way? And it may take a little bit, y'all, because your initial gut reaction, just like mine, is going to be like, heck no, Jen, you don't even know what they did. Heck no, Jen, you don't even have a clue. Okay, I don't. Just want you to think about it. I want you to noodle it. I want you to roll it around in your head. Is there any way that you can assume positive intent? And next, I want you to seek understanding, not agreement. Did you know we can have forgiveness with people that we absolutely disagree with? Absolutely disagree with. And I know this is a hot topic. I never want to talk about politics. I just think it's too divisive. And that's not what my show's here for. There's plenty of amazing podcasts that you can find that reflect whatever political view that you have. But no matter how you vote, I really think that if we learn empathy, then we're going to learn that there's absolutely no one that we can't do life with. Because we're going to seek understanding. We're not going to seek agreement. I actually put out on my Instagram right after the election, and I just asked people, like, why are you afraid? I want to genuinely know why you're afraid. And even that shift in my own mindset, before I would have been like casting blame and being like, you've got no reason to be afraid. And when you start to get around a bunch of people, you learn, you know what? There's a lot about people's stories that I don't know. And if I assume that I know, then I'm going to cut off a lot of relationships. I don't think that's necessary. But if we're seeking to build bridges, then we're going to ask more questions. Like, how about you actually seek to understand why someone is coming at a situation the way they're coming at it? Why don't we seek to understand why someone feels like that? Guess what? You may not be able to relate to it. You may feel completely different because you're coming with a whole different thing. That's fine. But do we want to build a bridge, or do we just want to build a wall? You get to decide. And I've decided that walls are a whole lot heavier to carry than bridges. If I can build a bridge, I'm going to build it and still maintain my own integrity, my own character, and my own self-respect. We don't have to give any of that up to build bridges to other people. We can seek to understand, and we can also put boundaries on how we will and will not be treated or talked to. So do not misunderstand forgiveness as any kind of weakness. It's deciding that the relationship is worth more than any type of opinion. If you have broken relationships because you disagree over something, I am just telling you, take a huge step back and ask yourself, is that worth it? Yes, Jen, I'm staking my claim. Okay, it's worth the whole relationship. Can you just understand that their opinion is not a direct attack on you? It's their own opinion, and it is completely separate from you. Can you separate that in your mind and still build a wall or build a bridge to that relationship? I think I can. I have a bunch of people in my life right now. We all voted different. We all have different religious backgrounds. We all have different beliefs. And guess what? We can find common ground because we love people. So I want to build a bridge, and I want to help you in your business and help you in your life, because ultimately you are a good person who's not trying to do things illegal and who's not trying to be shady. So you've got to decide ultimately what matters. And if what matters is that you want to build bridges to people, you got to start ripping down the walls. The last thing we've got to do more is listen. Actively listen to understand others' intentions and challenges. Just like I said, ask more questions and really listen. Don't listen to respond, listen to hear. If I ask a question, if you ask somebody a question, do you actually want to know the answer? Or are you just trying to get your voice out? Until you're ready to listen to the other person, do not start a conversation towards forgiveness. If you're going to prove someone else wrong, you're not ready. You know how I know that? It took a couple of months for me to actually be ready to send a text message and say, I was really hurt, and I know that you're really hurt, and I want to do whatever it takes to rebuild trust and figure out how we can build a bridge back to each other. And I had to be able to text that and mean it. Not, but I'm still going to make sure that you feel all the weight of the crap that you threw at me. No. That's not worth it anymore. I'm like, no, I know that you've felt years of pain and I've felt years of pain and I want to do whatever it takes to relieve each other of pain. Because life is too short. It's way too short. So you ask yourself right now, what's one relationship that you could take one step towards? You could send one text, or even you could just start thinking through, stepping into their shoes and saying, is there any other way I could reframe this situation? Is there any way that they actually could, in their own mind, intended this for good, or just they're doing it out of their own ignorance, or they're doing it out of their own situation? I mean, just think about the bad kids in school. As an adult, you know the bad kids in school are actually just acting bad because they so desperately need attention and their home life probably really, really, really sucks. And somehow we can easily understand that for a young child, but we don't actually also understand that for an adult. Because every single one of us has so many unhealed things in our lives. Like, what harm is it going to do to give someone an extra dose of empathy today? And I'm going to tell you because of my own personal experience with it. You actually could relieve yourself of a whole huge weight. You could smile a little different. You could go to bed a little lighter tonight. If you've got this situation like this and you're like, I'm not ever letting them hurt me again. To what on earth is it going to take for us to be able to have a relationship again? And every situation in the future, going back to these things, assuming positive intent, seeking understanding, not necessarily agreement, and listening, actively listening. It's a heavy conversation. But I genuinely believe if you take this to heart, if this is something, and you may have to come back and listen to this 100 times, if you get in a situation where you were just angry, take the time to be angry. Take the time to feel all the feels. Don't shove it aside. But don't take too long to come back around and figure out how to build that bridge back to each other. I love you guys. That may sound crazy because I may not know you, but you guys, there are people all across the world that hate people for no reason. And so I will always choose to love you for no reason until I meet you and find the millions of reasons there are to love you. Let's go build some empathy bridges. Love you guys. Keep being genuine.